Triangular Trade in Plain English by Hannah, Kalea, Isaac, and Elias. Triangular trade, the transatlantic profession that made many rich from exploitation of a country. The first leg of the journey starts in Europe and sails down to West Africa. Goods such as beads, cowrie shells, refined metals, textiles, brandy, other alcohols, and most importantly, guns and ammo given to the slave captors. Mandinka, Serir, Fola, Upper Gambia, and the Mendi village were all hot spots to set up camp. Once the captors had slaves, they put them in a dungeon-like fortress. These structures were generally called slave forts. They were built to prevent pirates and other captors from stealing the slaves. These forts held slaves for months, eventually leading to the deaths of many. Most of the slaves who survived their stay in the dungeons exited with mental distress. The Middle Passage. The second leg of the route mostly consisted of bringing slaves to the West Indies and growing America. Sadly, this is where most slaves deceased. The average length of a Middle Passage voyage was around 3 weeks. Usually 30 to 40% of the transferred slaves died within the first 1 to 2 weeks. Many deaths of the slaves were caused by malnutrition or new diseases brought by the sailors. The average number of natives brought onto a slaver ship was around 300 slaves. A third of those people would most likely die. That's 100 individuals. And if in total around 15 million slaves crossed the Middle Passage and about 1/3 of the captives on each ship died, then that means about 5 million slaves died in total. If a captive did not die, they were usually abused verbally, physically, and mentally. The Middle Passage usually went to the West Indies or straight on up to the U.S. colonies. Once in the New World, slaves were either auctioned off to anyone who could pay or selected to become a slave captor and help enslave more slaves. People who attended the auctions were generally farmers in need of cheap assistance or merchants who want continuous service for years on end. If a slave didn't cooperate, they would be broken. Broken meaning tortured or beaten until they obeyed all commands. Slaves would usually stay in the colonies doing work for little or no pay. The cycle starts again by products made by slaves such as rugs, guns, iron, wood, alcohol, sugar, and tobacco, all being shipped back to Europe, eventually continuing the triangular trade.